Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. Welcome to another episode of Context. Today we turn our attention to Georgia, once again at the heart of Europe's big questions. Prime Minister Irakli Kopakidze says his country is open to dialogue but claims European bureaucracy avoids direct contact. Meanwhile, Brussels insists that EU membership is a guarantee of peace and security. Today we ask, where is Georgia really headed and what do these dynamics mean for the wider region? Joining me today to unpack is Klaus Jurgens, political analyst with Economy First Limited from London, UK. Klaus, welcome to Context.
Thank you, Dilek. Hello.
Hello. Now, how should we understand Irakli Kopakidze's statement about European bureaucracy avoiding contacts with representatives of the Georgian authorities? Is this frustration directed at Brussels' approach, or is it part of Georgia's domestic narrative?
Well, that would be a topic I have to be very brief instead of writing volumes about it. Now, EU accession, of course, is a topic which is not new. It is going on over the decades. As you know, of course, the EU enlarged step by step from 6 and then 12 and then 15 and eventually 28 and then 27 after Brexit. It was always a plan, by me having been in Brussels in my younger years. Now, it was always the plan to enlarge the European Union or the European communities as it was by then. There were two trains of thought, and if I have 1 minute, I really should go into this because this explains quite a lot about what is going on with Georgia now.
Of course.
There was two different viewpoints. The first one is, shall we deepen the existing European communities, later on European Union first, or shall we enlarge it first? And no one really knew what would have been better. Create a working internal market for people, goods, services, finances, what have you, or have a huge, big, perhaps as big as the Council of Europe minus Soviet Union, then Russia at the time. And this debate is ongoing. Now, the problem always was when a candidate country was declared, how can that particular candidate country actually become a full member state? And you had to do two things. First, tens, then hundreds of thousands of pages of EU law, the body of EU law, the acquis communautaire, the French word. And at the same time, there were later on political criteria. So the EU not only said we are an economic free movement for this or that community, but we actually want to have political criteria too. Then the problem started. Who defines these political criteria? Yes, indeed, democracy, human rights, freedom of expression. Fair enough. So this is where we are now. Okay. Coming back to your question very, very briefly, I think Georgia has a point, because not everything is perfect within the European Union itself with regards to democracy, human rights, and definitely not the economy. So we have the same debate we have with the Republic of Turkey. When and how should a candidate country join? What are the conditions? And very often Brussels forgets actually to enter into a dialogue. And this is exactly the situation now. Suspension of candidate country talks have exactly the opposite impact of what is intended.
Okay, so you mentioned the two main criteria for EU accession, and the second one was political criteria. So from Georgia's perspective, how realistic is EU membership in the near future, given Georgia's current political conditions, talking about human rights, democracy, so on and so forth?
Well, here we are. The EU should learn not how to use this hard power via sanctions or suspension of membership talks. It sets exactly the wrong signals to the political elites and at the same time to, in all positive meaning of the word, the ordinary citizen, the electorate. Because then they say, Brussels doesn't really want us. They want to interfere in our domestic politics, so why would we trust them, actually? This is one point, yes. Now, if you see that the candidate country, like all candidate countries, because if not, they would have been members decades ago, every candidate country has to overcome two obstacles. First, align its national law with this EU acquis communautaire, the body of EU law, and then adhere to a number of political criteria. Now, in order to do so, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. You have to change certain systems. You have to overhaul from the judiciary to how you deal with human rights, to everything, public procurement, what have you. But this is the positive dimension. On the way to becoming an EU member state, you actually really overhaul your own systems and eventually become a better country. Now, two options. If Brussels closes and slams the door voluntarily because they think, Georgia is not ready yet and we don't like the political direction, then perhaps Brussels should take a look at why is this political direction happening. Perhaps the pull factor of the EU is no longer as big as it once was, because the EU has its very own deficiencies. Now, only think about the Ukraine conflict and what happened in Washington some days ago, a few days ago. Now, the European leaders came and listened, basically, but now there will be a meeting between Putin and Zelensky and Trump, at least I hope so. Yeah. Now, where's the European Union? Sitting idle somewhere and here and there, perhaps. Many people are questioning, where is the EU actually headed? The soul searching has begun. And what the EU is doing now, closing the doors towards Georgia and saying, you have to, first of all, adhere to our criteria, then again, we talk with you. I think it is exactly the wrong approach. It will not increase support for EU membership in Georgia, exactly the opposite.
Okay. And do you see Kopakits's tone as a pivot away from Europe or simply a bargaining tactic?
I think, yes, definitely a bargaining tactic, not playing to the gallery, but I think a very clever bargaining tactic, first of all to his domestic electorate, but then to the wider region in particular. He said we can be ready to 2030. Now, let's assume this is a little bit, with all my modesty, over the top. I know how long it takes to help to fine-tune and to streamline a national administration and bureaucracy and get it EU ready. It takes time. But let's assume any time after 2030. I think this sends a clear signal to his electorate, at the same time to the entire region, Southern Caucasus, and to Brussels as well, that Georgia is ready and continues to be ready to become a full EU member state and will continue on the process. Now, Brussels has already threatened, if nothing happens by the end of August, early September, if I'm not wrong, there might be a rethink of visa-free travel. There might be a rethink of the partnership agreement. Now, yes, who is going to be punished? Of course, the ordinary citizens, investors, company, prosperity. So, as I've said, what you mentioned from the side of Georgia is not only playing to the gallery. There is a point, and I hope Brussels is going to listen. Okay.
And speaking of how citizens would be affected or are affected, how is the Georgian public responding to this? Is there still overwhelming popular support for EU integration?
Well, if you go back a few years, yes, of course, you know the figures, of course, absolutely overwhelming support. And I think this will continue. Now, many things are happening in the region which were unprecedented, but luckily are happening. Think about the strategic partnership and then the ensuing peace between your own fine nation and Armenia. And think about the Sangazur corridor. Think about the wider region. Think about peace in the region. And Georgia, of course, is a vital part of this. Some years ago, I have been following investment strategies saying we not only invest into one country, but we want to have Georgia always on board, perhaps even to create a smaller internal market fashioned after the EU. The EU should come to the rescue and say, yes, there are some issues we are not happy with. Let's sit down and talk, but not burning the bridges.
Okay. And so speaking of the wider region, Klaus, from Baku's point of view, how important is Georgia's alignment with the EU for regional connectivity projects?
I think it is very important. First of all, you gain leverage over Brussels. You become, as a candidate country, you become almost a member of the club, and you have your certain demands, and at the same time, you have to accept some of the Brussels demands. Now, sorry that I looked here, I made some notes. I think what is the most important thing now to keep Georgia on the path towards EU membership is that you actually meet face to face, that you talk, and that Brussels no longer refuses to actually continue the negotiations. But one word of caution, if I may. There are, of course, political circles in every country who are using or misusing a future EU membership for their own nationalistic sentiments in a certain way of saying we have to become a member of the European Union, and then the political classes we don't like anymore would be history anyhow. And this is exactly wrong, because those political classes and the bureaucracy and the administration actually made Georgia a candidate country. Now, yes, of course, not every politician is happy how the EU is run, but from what I heard now and rereading what emanates out of Georgia, Georgia is not leaving the path towards EU membership, not at all. It just wants to be accepted as a fair partner. And Georgia is absolutely right, or is it not? There are deficiencies in Brussels, in the European Union member states. Think about freedom of speech. Think about the Palestine situation. Think about the economy. It is no longer a paradise. It is, of course, a wonderful peace project, and it has to continue. But I think Georgia would have a very, very good place in it. And it would help the EU, if I may still say so half a minute. The EU's soul searching will continue for some time. And the Southern Caucasus can become not only a vital partner, but can you imagine Georgia one day being part of that EU train, as long as it's based on freedom, human rights, international reconciliation, and understanding of other nations? The EU should return to its original founding fathers, 6 nations totally opposed to each other, and the Second World War has just ended, and eventually becoming friends by accepting diversity. The EU has lost its approach to diversity.
Okay, and on that, do you think Georgia's balancing act between Europe and regional partners like Azerbaijan and Turkey strengthens or weakens its hand?
No, I think it actually strengthens its hand. Think about that every leader eventually must address one issue, which is the purchasing power of their population. Now, this means economic welfare. Economic welfare comes via investment, higher production levels, export and import, and a stable economy, so to speak. And a stable economy, indeed, is what Europe used to be quite good at. And now it has to look into different directions to say, our new members actually, can they bring us back to this stable economy? Because we open new markets. Yes, I'm not only talking about a functioning market economy, not from a capitalist viewpoint, no. But the economy should be the first issue of concern. You know, I'm quite involved and interested in topics, of course, linked to the Republic of Turkey. Now, over 2 decades ago, Turkey had exactly the same dimension, the same dilemma. Do we reform the economy first to bring more purchasing power to the people, or do we re-establish or establish a fully functioning democracy? And sensationally, Turkey actually managed to do both things at the same time. Now, this needs willpower, and this needs support from the population. And the population, of course, supports it. Now, Georgia has exactly the same dilemma. Should we only criticize the European Union, where we have a right to do so, or should we actually do a little bit give and take the rough with the smooth, as I said yesterday? And this is where Georgia is headed to. Last point, promise, what I think would be the most dangerous thing if Brussels tries to interfere in domestic Georgian politics and says, we don't accept the way you run your country, we know it better, we tell you exactly what to do, and in the worst case even stage or support anti-government demonstrations on the streets. This leads to instability. This leads eventually to the people saying, Brussels wants to dominate us like in the kindergarten, and a democracy will not accept it. But yes, Georgia has, of course, to do its homework too. Yes, so I'm not looking only into one direction.
Okay, all right. And staying on Azerbaijan, how does this discourse from Tbilisi compare with Baku's own approach to Brussels?
Well, I think Baku's approach to Brussels was in the past very often negatively influenced, not by Azerbaijan itself, by Baku, your fine nation, but by anti-Azerbaijani lobbying groups in particular from one country, and then copied and pasted in Brussels, in Berlin and in Washington and what have you. So, of course, your country, Azerbaijan, and rightfully so, was very skeptical when positive signs emanated from Brussels. Yes, we like you now, we accept you now, you have become a trustworthy partner, and forget about the past. Tuck, tuck, tuck. What happened in Washington, of course, now changed everything, changed the rhetoric after 5 years of preparation from the side of Azerbaijan. I think what I understand is that Brussels is very interested in closer cooperation with Azerbaijan. And this goes back, I believe, 2 years when there was an event in Brussels hosted by the European Parliament and your embassy for Benelux in Brussels. And the questions were asked. I had the honor to moderate one of the panels. The question was asked, well, what can Azerbaijan actually contribute to the European Union? And I had made the discreet comment by saying, together with other commentators, of course, look, Azerbaijan has a unique geopolitical position. Azerbaijan is a fully functioning market economy, fully functioning democracy, but wants to have closer relations with the European Union and other Western partners. So you have to find out topics of common concern. And the environment, clean green energy, became the first such topic of common understanding. And now many, many others are following. I think Azerbaijan can actually play a very vital role in discreetly reminding our friends in Brussels, look, if you support Georgia in this and that regard, instead of putting up the mental drawbridges, Georgia can become an absolutely vital partner for EU international relations. Azerbaijan can play a pivotal role in this, yes.
Okay. Klaus, I have to end it there. We're running short of time. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Context today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the program. Until next time, thank you for watching.